Baling State Park, located in southern Indiana, where memories are made naturally. Welcome to Baling State Park. We're standing here at the Hickory Hollow Nature Center, where behind me is the 1850 hay press barn, and inside it is the 1850 hay press. You might ask yourself, what is a hay press? Well, it's a large handcrafted wooden piece of machinery that was used for baling hay or pressing hay. Now, back in the 1800s or early 1800s, travelers would go by destination from one place to another by means of horses and wagons and oxen or cattle pulling those wagons, and they had the need to feed those animals. The early settlers would use loose hay to feed their animals. They would throw it on a wagon. It would just be loosely stacked up on top of it. It would fall off quickly. It would be used up very, very quickly, and it was not very efficient. Before the hay press, your early settlers would go out, they would take a hay scythe, and they would cut that hay out of the field. It would fall over, they would grab it up, they would take it and put it in something called the jump press. And as they loaded that jump press up, they would get up in that jump press and they would jump up and down and try to smash that hay. The idea of the hay press became very instrumental and important when they realized the efficiency of a compact bale that was very, very tightly packed. To make it more manageable and efficient to feed their animals and to move hay, they came up with the idea of the hay press. Now we're going to go inside and I'm going to give you a look at the hay press up close and show you how it works. In 1843, a gentleman by the name of Samuel Hewitt came up with an idea to improve a patent on a hay press. And hence you have behind me the Leavenworth laying coal hay press, otherwise known as the Mormon hay beater or just generally hay press. Think about what you have done this morning. You've flipped on maybe an electrical outlet, you've turned on a light, you maybe used a microwave, you looked at a computer, maybe your cell phone. You looked at a lot of different types of technology. Back in the day of this technology that we had in the mid-1800s, you didn't have any of those modern conveniences that we have today. Take all that away. You didn't have vehicles, you didn't have your bus, you didn't have the modern means that we had. When you drive through southern Indiana, you see a lot of common themes with farms. You see a lot of farming equipment, you see tractors, you see hay balers. The modern hay bale today is typically round. You have large square bales, all meant for transport to those farms, to those cities, to those areas where you have livestock to feed those animals. The modern square bale today is actually large and is very easily to transport on semi-trucks. Go back to the mid-1850s, historically we didn't have the interstate system, we didn't have those semi-trucks. We had our means of transportation was the Ohio Valley. That's why these presses were so integral for transportation of this hay to these growing cities that were powered by horses, powered by cattle, powered by wagons. As those cities started to grow, they ran out of hay, so they went outward to those agricultural fields to where those farmers could make some money. The hay press was patented on the means of making money with large compacted bales to put on the Ohio River to take up and down the stream to sell to those individuals that needed that. We have census reports that show that these hay bales went all the way down the Ohio Valley to the Ohio River to the Mississippi to the mouth of New Orleans to where they sold those hay bales. We have evidence of the cavalry during the Civil War having all those large horses and those great numbers of horses to have to feed them. So they had these hay bales shipped in just to feed their horses during the Civil War. This is a very important part of history and agricultural business in this area. It's very unique. And today there's only about a dozen or so that still exist. Where we had hundreds back in the Ohio Valley at the time, we only have about a dozen. Here at Baling Woods, we have one of the first operational hay presses since over 150 years ago. We have a couple scattered over in Kentucky. We have a couple scattered up in Switzerland County, up near Ohio County, all along the Ohio Valley though. A couple of them are working condition now where they've been restored and they do operate. And we have one that we're going to demonstrate here for you today, kind of as the pioneers did back then. Behind me, you have kind of the star of the show, or the engine, I should so to say, and this is Forrest. Forrest is our Durham Shorthorn oxen, and oxen were one of the first animals to help settle the West. Back in the early 1800s, you had folks that were traveling across the country, across the plains, and the oxen was one of those animals to help pull the wagons, to plow the fields, to skid the logs, to help those pioneers settle. And behind me, we have Forrest. He weighs in about 2,500 pounds. He's going to be the operator for the hay press right now. And as they start to basically gear him up with his tools that he needs to operate, you're going to see him put on the most important piece of equipment on that ox, and that's the yoke. You have the bow that goes around underneath, and then you have the yoke that goes around on top. Then he's going to get a harness put on him. Once he gets that harness put on him, then we're going to turn him around and back him up and hook him up to the hay press. With oxen, they're very specific to certain commands. So you'll see me underneath here giving the commands. You see my stick right here, it's called a goad stick. And the goad stick is basically just an extension of my arm. As I step down to see him, and you'll see how tall he is, I cannot see over his back. I can't see much around him at all, so this is an extension of my arm to be able to tell him where to go. And I use 3 points of contact when I train him. I use my voice, I use my body movement, and then I also use the stick to tell him where to go. So I'll give him the different commands of come up. That basically means to follow me. I'll give him the command to whoa, or to stop. I'll give him the command to back up, and of course that means back up. And then I'll tell him the other commands of G and haul, and that means to go right and left. So as we hook him up, we're putting the harness over top of him, and that's going to give him the power to hook him up to be able to pull from his shoulders. The process that we're going to do to operate this press is fairly simple. It's a large upright piece of wood, so to say, that's to be very simple, that's basically run off of a system of ropes and pulleys powered by the ox. As the ox goes around, or Forrest goes around in a circle, he's going to catch a slide on the bottom horizontal pulley. And as he goes around, he will lift that pulley with a rope and a slide up, which is attached to a big drop block. And that drop block will start to go up in top of the barn. And as that drop block goes up, the gentleman upstairs will start forking in hay into the hay compartment. Once that compartment is full, then they will give us a signal to drop the block. We will take the lever and
coming down,
trip the lever. That block will fall and smash and make the first flake of hay. We will do that a series of times. We'll pick it up again, raise the block up, load the compartment, trip the lever, smash, and make another flake of hay. And we do that a series of about 6 times to make one bale that's roughly 200 to 300 pounds. Dimension-wise is about 3 to 4 feet wide or square on the bales, and we'll show you some of those here in a few minutes. As we go around, I will stop and I'll give you a couple other neat information pieces about this barn and the hay press. Little known fact about oxen is when they become 4 years old, they are classified as oxen. Before that, or under 4, they're called working steers. What classifies an ox as an animal able to work is basically they're 4 years old and they're trained to work, and they are a steer. Like I mentioned, oxen are extremely smart. Once they learn something, they never forget it. So the term dumb as an ox is actually a false statement. Strong as an ox is a term that you've probably heard of, and it's actually very true. They can pull up to things about twice their size. And typically oxen are used in teams. We have a double yoke, and as a team, they can pull a lot of weight for log skidding, for plowing. For the purposes of the hay press, though, we use a single ox. Coming up! Whoa. As the gentlemen are loading up the hay up into the upper compartment, they're filling that full of massive amounts of hay with the hay forks. Originally, back in the mid-1800s, the preferred type of hay was Timothy hay. And they would start to bale that, and they would start to cut it by hand, and they would let it cure out in what's called the hay mows, which I'm standing here now, and they would start to load that up throughout the summer, let it cure out until it was actually cured enough to start to bale.
Coming down.
That there is a very unique swoosh and thump that can only be heard by the actions of an 1850 style hay press. According to documentation, you can hear that swoosh and thump up to a mile away. And we're going to go around, continue to go around, load the compartment, and continue to make that bale. Come up, come up, come up. Whoa. In 2003, we basically dedicated this barn into what you see today. At its original location, it's set 5 miles from here, about a quarter mile from the confluence with the Ohio River. The project here of moving this barn was a very long process with a lot of different people involved, a lot of different groups. It was taken very seriously to try to keep the integrity of some of these timbers. Like I said, all the timbers with white tags are original timbers. And even this timber here with the white tags right here, this is a timber here, and we have a tag here that basically says water level from the flood of 1937. During that 37 flood, it took out a lot of hay presses because these presses sat along the Ohio River and they couldn't withstand that flooding along those waterways. This barn it's what's called a timber frame barn. It's post and peg, and you'll see these pegs that attach these together. There's very few nuts and bolts besides what's on the press that hold it together. It's done by these pegs with they're spliced together in a mortise and tendon joint. But in these joints you'll see some white epoxy, and those are just to help secure up the integrity of some of those pieces that were rotten. Some of the pieces were actually spliced together and pinned so that way we can keep the whole timber instead of scrapping it. As I mentioned, there's about a dozen hay presses or so that exist. All of them are really similar, but all of them are a little different on a little bit of the mechanics from where the pulleys go. This barn itself, we had pieces that we don't know what they went for. So we kind of, in theory, suspect that this barn was built with the timbers that were available at the time that those farmers had that they could get from their surrounding area to build it. Sometimes it came from old river boats that came from down the river. Sometimes it came from other barns, and they would salvage and use what they had at the time to build this barn. We have a mix of wood in here. We know that we have different types of wood that wasn't local to that area, so it had to come down river from other areas. We have white pine, we have poplar, we have white cedar, we have walnut. We have a lot of different types of wood, even oak, into this barn that's just a hodgepodge of different materials to create this, this large barn that you see that's been restored. And the barn was basically built for a certain purpose. You have lots of different barns. You have tobacco barns, you have milk barns, you have chicken barns. The hay press barn is specifically built for the hay press. And the hay press barn is built to house the hay press. If you look at the hay press, it's all suspended from the top, and the different framework suspends that and is able to withstand the pounding that that block makes as it falls and makes another flake of hay. The press itself weighs about 5,000 pounds. It's 35 feet tall. The barn itself is 40 feet tall. So you're looking at basically a 4-story barn. It's about 100 by 60 feet, 100 feet long, 60 feet wide, just for housing this hay press. Now we've concluded part of the initial process of making the bale and making the first flakes of hay. Now what we're going to do with him now is we're going to reverse him around, turn him around, and we're going to compress the bale basically from the bottom. The whole time we're dropping the block and we are loading up the hay compartment, the jack screw in the middle is going down, and the top of the jack screw is the bottom of the bale. And as it goes down, it allows for more hay to be loaded in for that bale to be enlarged and to make a larger bale. The problem with now is the bottom of the bale is way below the floor level here. So we got to get that bale back up. So we're going to actually squeeze that bale from the bottom up until they tell us that it's back to floor level. Then they're going to tie it off in 4 different places, and then they're going to muscle that bale out after we lift the block back off of it, and then we'll start back over. So I'm going to turn Forrest around. We're going to walk in a clockwise circle, and we're going to start to squeeze that bale from the bottom, and you'll see that screw start to turn and to go up. Haul, haul, step over, step over, step over, whoa. Come up. In 1863, according to the Leavenworth Democrat, Oliver Archibald was working in this press, or working helping make a bale at the time. And according to records from that article, Oliver Archibald lost his big toe by means of hay press taking it off. Now where he was on this press, it's a mystery, but we've never found that toe. But someplace, I'm sure he was standing as that block fell to take that off. The process now that the guys upstairs are partaking is starting to tie off that bale. On the top and the bottom of that bale are 2 blocks that have grooves in them in 4 different places. So they're going to take a needle and a thread, so to say, and to groove a 1/4-inch braided rope through the top and through the bottom. Then they're going to tie it off by hand. The whole time that bale is still compressed by that block and the squeezing from the bottom. So once they get that tied, we're going to raise up the block for the last time. That bale is actually going to swell up, and to tighten those ropes even more, the guys are going to pull that bale out, close up the hay doors, and they're going to start back over again. We'll start to load hay up, so that way it has a cushion to get ready for the drop that block another time to start another bale. The process historically probably would have taken about 10 or 15 minutes to make one bale, a couple hundred, 200 to 300 pounds. With our process that we take the time, we're still looking at a bale, or basically a machine here that is over 150 years old. And so we have to take time with it to make sure, because things can still break on it. As the farmer would have back then, they would have malfunctions, they would have had problems with their press, and they have fixed it on site. Sometimes they had problems with the animals. Sometimes they had to switch out. So our process is not nearly as effective as they would have been back then. They had been really working those bales out because time was money back then for that business for them. We hope you enjoyed the show today. O'Bannon Woods State Park has a lot to offer. We hope you have a chance to come see us sometime soon and enjoy some of the hiking, the camping, the picnicking, and even the nature center here at O'Bannon Woods State Park.